The Lemon Read is the same thing as the Boyu P6. For GoodEreader.com, this is Peter. Okay, scratch that. There are some differences, and actually, it's a little bit better. The Lemon Read S61P, or the Lemon Read 1, is actually based off of the Boyu white label shell that has no branding on it, called the Boyu M1. As you may have heard in previous videos of ours, Boyu has become its own OEM, meaning they make their own things. They used to use Jezitech to create their products. They basically took 2020 off to create their own e-readers and products in-house. Not only that, they white label out to other companies. For example, the company in question today, Lemon Read. These guys have their hands in thousands of schools in mainland China, and they have ordered a ton of these units. How is it different than the P6? Well, for that we gotta go over to the chalkboard. Looking at them side by side, you actually lose a little bit of PPI, 212 on the Lemon Read versus 300 on the Boyu P6. However, it must be said that on a 6-inch screen, the difference is negligible. Following that, the P6 only has a micro USB, whereas the Lemon Read gets a USB-C. The P6 has no speakers, and the Lemon Read actually gets a pair of onboard stereo speakers. The P6 does come with an SD card, whereas the Lemon Read does not, but conversely, the Lemon Read has a 3.5mm headphone jack and the P6 does not. Another piece of hardware that the P6 is devoid of is a home button. The Lemon Read actually adds a physical home button on the bezel. So given all the differences, we would honestly say don't be so quick to judge this unit. We certainly were. When we did the unboxing, we're like, oh, it's a P6, it says Lemon Read on it, fantastic. The hardware is completely redone, and why that is because you don't just add a 3.5mm headphone jack. Because unless the hardware and the backing and the actual curvature, as you can see here, of all of the plastic elements matches, which it doesn't on the P6, then that means it has to be redesigned. The volume controls need to be redesigned. The PCB, the circuit board on the inside, needs to have a volume control on there now when it didn't have one before. A home button needs to be on there. So on first glance, it looks like it's the same thing, but it really is not. However, why this video is so short is because the OS and the UI and the firmware and the software and everything else is just like book. It is going to be the exact same thing. It's the very simplistic grid that you can change into whatever 3x3, 4x4, 2x2, however simplistic you want to make it. They do have the exact same overall UI. It's going to be the same thing. You have your contrast level, you have your volume control, or if you have your volume control on the side there as well. If you check out the drop down, you get Bluetooth, A2 mode, Wi-Fi, battery saver settings. Settings is where all of your settings are going to be, of course. This will say BY Read because it is Boyu Reader, so it is not going to say Lemon Read, but that's totally fine because for the most part, it's just the front and the back that says Lemon Read. Now this is another thing. The Boyu P6, the S61P, the M1, the Lemon Read 1, they're all really kind of convoluted names and model numbers. You can just refer to this as the Lemon Read 1. The M1 is actually the Boyu OEM unit themselves. So yes, the software is going to be the exact same. So let's look at some content. Because this is catered towards educational institutions and schools, they actually give you about 9 books preloaded on here. They're all copyright-free books. They're all Project Gutenberg kind of things, so they're not going to, be the latest New York bestsellers, New York Times bestsellers. They're just going to be kind of whatever books. But it does start off with a kind of not so good looking layout. You can change all that, of course. You just go here, choose your font size. You can choose a bunch of other things. You can even use the slider bar over here to show your progress, whip through half the book, and then you're off reading a normal book. Now, it is very small. This is because it is a 6-inch. So this is something that Amazon's not even doing anymore with their 6.8. So, even with the same thing with smartphones and tablets, a bigger screen is better, kind of holds true with e-readers, in a way because more text fits on the screen, but you're not going to beat this price point because it is priced extremely well for the size at only $140, which is actually pretty good for onboard audio, which a lot of readers just don't have anymore. You're also not going to be going crazy with PDFs on this thing. You'd be kidding yourself if you said, oh yeah, PDFs are fine. No, they're not. PDFs are not good on 6 inches. They're too small, they scale down too much, it's just not a good experience whatsoever. If you scroll down for the top, you can use the system-wide contrast bar to actually increase the image quality. It is quite nice. The image quality is great. It's just that, well, you're not going to really get a handle on things on PDFs on a 6-inch. You can zoom in and you're like, okay, well that's fine, but at the same point, well, where are you on the page? You know, there's no minimap or anything like that. And granted, you can sideload in other APK files, but it's just not a good experience. So if PDF's something you want, does have the capability to do so, it would not be recommended on a 6-inch. Comics and graphic novels are roughly the same thing because, well, a lot of them are PDF file formats. If you are running CBR, CBZ, it's just, you're going to kind of run into the same thing. You're going to be zooming into the individual windows and cells of the manga in question. And honestly, if you're going to get a manga reader, we would recommend 7.8 inches or above. Although this is very pocket friendly, it fits in the palm of your hand depending on how big your hand is, and it's actually shorter than some smartphones. Surprisingly, the audio is fantastic. A huge shock, and to be completely honest, this is the first time I've played audio on this. The guys during the testing said, oh yeah, it works fine, and they added in a copyright-free music track. I've never heard the audio until right now. I was gonna cut, but I'd rather just tell you guys straight up right now. It is surprisingly good. You get stereo speakers on this, whereas the P6 didn't have any audio whatsoever. This also can be hooked up to a stereo speaker via the 3.5mm headphone jack or even Bluetooth. So there's a lot of ways to connect this for an audio experience, but it is amazing to see twin speakers built into the actual chassis itself so that audio is just a click away. You can just play whatever you want right out of the gates. Pleasantly surprised. So in the end, is having the same firmware but a little bit more bells and whistles for you? Well, maybe, but you have to ask yourself this. When this video was uploaded, we have seen tons of delays. Months of delays. In fact, Boyu currently has no devices they're able to sell, except the Lemon Reed. So if you're asking yourself, should I get a P6? The answer might be that you might not even have the opportunity. The Lemon Reed is printed in the thousands and is available now, whereas the P6, the P78, and the P10 is currently unknown. For GoodyReader.com and a review of the Lemon Reed, this is Peter.